Hey guys, before I start this video, I just thought I'd let you know I have finally sorted out a way to be able to edit. I finally got a new laptop. So yeah, hopefully you can hear me okay because I'm voice recording on the actual iMovie app, or whatever you want to call it, on the laptop. So hopefully you can hear me okay. So yeah, this was recorded early on in May, so I am very behind on videos, but I'm back, yay! So I will be starting to edit and upload. I don't know how I'm going to do it just yet, but I will figure that out as I go along. So yeah, I hope you enjoy my April, was it April? Yeah, April wrap up, and I will see you
Hi
soon.
everyone.
Bye.
Welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Molly and I do book content here on YouTube. And I do a mixture of Christian and non-Christian. And there will always be mostly fiction, but there will be the odd non-fiction here or there. Today I am doing a April wrap-up. Now, if you have seen my community tab post even, I messed up and accidentally deleted my editing software. And I can't get a new one because my laptop is so old it will not update to the newest operating system. And because of that, re-downloading the app that I use is not possible because that is also for the newest version. And I have tried to download another different editing software and I have the same issue of the app is too updated, or whatever you want to call it, too recent for me to use it on my laptop. So I don't know when you are going to see this. It may be I have to add this to my May wrap up, or it'll just be a really late April wrap up, but still separate in May. Maybe it'll be an extra video. I don't know. It depends on what I end up doing. Because I'm afraid I may need to buy a new laptop. And I don't want to do that. Because laptops are expensive. Even the cheap ones when you try to get them on offer. Which I'm looking at. But even that at the moment is too expensive. Even for a laptop that's 5 years old. So, I mean, there's no point praying for me now, because when you're seeing this, when this sees the light of day, it'll be too late and I will have already sorted it out. I also want to apologise for any change in the lighting. I do have my big light on, but the sun is still setting because it's that time of year where it doesn't set very early anymore. So, but it's a little too dark for me to keep the light off. So if there are changes in the light, I do apologise. And if you can see my necklace shining away underneath me, like I've got some sort of gold medallion or something. It's not, it's just my necklace. I apologise. Don't know what's going on, but we manage. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to get started. I'm remembering my reading journal this time, so I don't need to stop in the middle of filming to go and have a look. So yes, that should solve a few things at least. And actually I've got quite a bit to talk about today. I might start with the ones that I didn't get to and go from there. So if you've seen my May TBR, you will already be aware that these two books will be on my TBR pile of possibilities for this month, technically, because we're in May. But I did not get to, in April, these two books. And that is Erin Mangum's The Broken Branch. And this is a Christian fiction couldn't think what it was for a minute. So I didn't get to that. And then I also did not get to Jen Tuano's A Match in the Making, book 1 in her Matchmaker series. Again, this is Christian fiction. So I did carry these over to May, and hopefully I'll get to them. But we'll see. So those I can't really speak on. Now, I do have a book that I read on my Kindle. So I will put a picture up on one. I still can't remember which side it is, but one of these sides I will try and put a picture up of it, because there's a picture of it on my Kindle, but because my Kindle is black and white, it's not a great look. I can't talk. It's not great to look at because of the way it is. It doesn't look good unless there's colour. So I will put a picture up here so you get a proper look at what it looks like. And that is actually a free book that the author messaged me, or maybe the author's, well, I think it was the author because it was first person, because I wasn't sure if it could have been like their publisher or, you know, someone to kind of get the word out, so to speak. And a long one. But yeah. I was emailed a few months ago by this author saying that he writes Christian fiction, and this book in particular is about spiritual warfare, and this is a book called Bound by Blood by Sean David Brink. And yeah, I read his book. He asked me if I wanted to read it for free as a ebook. There was no obligation to, you know, talk about it on my channel or on Instagram or anywhere else. So there's no, like, he didn't ask me to talk about it. So all of my thoughts and ratings are all my own. They're all how I truly thought of it. So yes, it did take me a while to read this, not because I found it difficult to read or anything like that. It's because I wasn't prioritising it, so I started it and read it kind of as and when I got around to it. So when did I start it? Yeah, so I started this in March, and I finished it on the 21st of April. So it took me over a month to read it, technically. But I was reading it in and out. And I don't necessarily recommend doing that with books, but I did really enjoy it. And I actually gave it 5 stars, which I thought I gave it 4, but I guess I gave it 5. Oh yeah, when I thought about it, it was actually more of a 5-star. And it felt more like a 4-star, but mainly because I wasn't reading it regularly enough, which is my own fault. But I did really enjoy it. It was really good. There was a lot of definitely spiritual warfare. It was really interesting how he talked about, like, described the demons. It all seemed very biblically accurate in that respect. And it wasn't a biblical or historical book. It was set in the modern times, or modern enough anyway. And yeah, it had a lot of faith content. It wasn't surprising, really, in terms of, like, the setup of it. Like, it was all wrapped up nicely. There wasn't any twists. There were allusions to names that were used in the Bible. Like, there was a character called Cain, like Cain and Abel. There was I think it was the name of a jacket, and also the one that someone used as an alias initially. I think I could be wrong now. It's been a while since I read it. Well, a short while. But there's also a name called Jacobson, which I thought was pretty fun. I thought that was lovely. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It definitely made me cry in places. There was some great characters. There was a character called Jasmine, who was sort of like, who was an older woman. She was like a grandma sort of age. I don't really know what the age was, but I thought she was wonderful. She was a great, really strong character. I thought it was really good. I did really enjoy it. the way I'm talking about it makes it sound more like a 4-star really, but I don't know. I just found it really interesting, and when I was reading it I was really engaged and I was looking forward to continuing, and I actually wanted to read it more than I did. I didn't prioritise it as much because I wanted to prioritise my physical TBRs because they were my more urgent ones to get to. I mean, they weren't urgent, but there were ones that I needed to do for like challenges and stuff. So yeah, no, I did really enjoy it. I gave it 5 stars because technically it was definitely 5-star worthy in my opinion. But I think it's mainly because of how I'm remembering it, as well as the amount of time it took really to read it. So yeah, I did enjoy it. It was, yeah. I've got nothing else to really say to that really. There wasn't really anything much that I wrote onto it. Yeah, there was some great character arcs and spiritual growth as well. Yeah, no, it wasn't anything to write home about story-wise, if you know what I mean, in terms of like there was nothing particularly different or unusual, or like I said before, there were no twists, but it was really good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good book. I haven't read any more of his. I don't know whether there's more books that he's written. I don't necessarily mind about reading more of his books, but if there's something I see that crops up and it sounds good, I would definitely read it. Read one of those. So yeah, I thought it was a good book. So now that I've done that, that's the only ebook that I read in April, well, finished in April. Let's get started with my physical TBR. I forgot about another book that I hadn't read physically. So again, I will put the picture of it up on one of these sides. And that was let me check the title, hang on. The Murders in the Rue Morgue, and that is by Edgar Allan Poe. And this is a short story mystery. It also comes with a thriller, but it's more of a mystery. It wasn't really a thriller. And I actually listened to this. I know. I listened to an audiobook, guys. I don't really listen to audiobooks. Not because I'm particularly against them. Most of the time I don't have the chance to listen to them. Most of the time I like to watch when I'm doing things instead of just listen. So that's why I often watch YouTube or whatever when I'm doing whatever. But I was in a cafe and had to use my data because their Wi-Fi wasn't working, so in the end I turned it off. But before I did that, I downloaded a short audiobook, and I think this one was about an hour and a half, an hour 15 minutes, so it's very short. So the book is probably like a novella or something like that. And I didn't change the speed or anything, I don't think, from what I remember. So yeah. And this book was okay. I gave it 3 stars. Part of it is possibly because I listened to it, but I think part of it, when I looked at the reviews on Spotify, because that's where I listened to it, I think it was only about like 3.5, 4 stars in total-ish. So it's not a very highly rated book, I don't think. I don't know whether it's because I found it difficult to follow because I was only listening to it instead of looking at it like as well, or instead, I don't know. But it was okay. It was nothing special. I've never read any Edgar Allan Poe, and it's not put me off because I know he's done a lot of different books. But yeah, I only gave it a 3 star. It was nothing exciting. It was no Agatha Christie, shall we say. But yeah, it was written intellectually. So whether that's because the author writes intellectually, because I've never read any Edgar Allan Poe, or whether it's because of the character narrator, because it was written as if one of the characters telling you what had happened or whatever. So whether that was a character design for the type of character he was, or whether that's just how Edgar Allan Poe writes, I don't know. But it was intellectually written, and because I was listening to it as well, that just made it more difficult. But it was fine, it was clean, there was no swearing that I remember, it wasn't graphic, because again, it's only a short book as well, so, you know, there's only so much you can write into it. It was interesting though, it wasn't the normal sort of, let's just say it wasn't really murders, without spoiling it. So that bit was interesting, what had actually happened, but it wasn't particularly exciting, it wasn't shocking really, but it was fine. It passed the hour that I needed it to pass, because I wanted something to listen to whilst I was finishing off my bullet journal, because I use a colouring type of bullet journal where it has an arty bit that you colour in, but you don't do all the drawings and boxes or anything like that. Right up my street. You still have a bit of the artistic bit, you know, but you don't have to do it all by scratch. At scratch. Oh, I don't know. Either way, I didn't have to start from scratch. So, yeah, I only had about, so I used it to finish that off, basically. So it did the job, it was something to listen to, but yeah, not really my short book, that one anyway. But I'm not put off by the author. I mean, I wasn't particularly fussed about reading his books anyway, but I was curious, because I think he writes a bit of gothic fiction, or at least that's always what he gave me, that sort of vibe. So I could be wrong, but yeah, it was alright. So the next book I'm going to talk about is the wonderful Ella Montgomery, and this is Anne of Windy Willows. This is the 4th? I didn't say, but yeah, it's the 4th book. So this takes place kind of like, not the next year, but it's like the next school year. So like, I think this takes place in September-ish. Yeah, this takes place in September. And I love this book. This is the first book of the series now that I have not previously read. So the first 3 were all rereads, but this is the first one that I've not actually read before. And so yeah, this takes place not long after the end of the 3rd book, Anne of the Island. And I loved it. I just love her books. I read this really quickly. This was, again, 5 stars. And there's a lot more letters in this. The majority of this book is written in letters. And them all letters from Anne to, I'm not going to tell people, but I mean, most of you probably already know. But just for the sake of anyone who doesn't necessarily know and don't want to be spoiled, basically the letters are all in Anne's point of view. And then there are bits where it's just, you know, it's a third person, like how the books have been written before, basically. So yeah, I thought it was fantastic. There's some lovely new characters. There's a lovely little girl called Little Elizabeth, or at least that's, her name's not Little, but it's little. It's like how it's the name Anne calls her. She calls her Little Elizabeth. And absolutely gorgeous little girl. She's like 8 or 9 when you first meet her in the book. And oh, she's so sweet. She's basically Anne, but younger. So that was lovely to see. And I do have to say, I do have to tell you this line because it made me laugh. So, and this is right at the beginning. Literally, I mean, technically it says page 4, but, you know, page 2 of the actual story. And, you know, Anne's writing a letter, and you don't know who the character is when she's talking about it. So those of you who don't know who this character is, you don't need to worry, because neither did I when I started. But I just have to read you this sentence. So basically, Anne moves to Windy Willows to do her teaching for a few years. And she goes to this lane called Spooks Lane, which isn't its real name, but everyone calls it that. And so, so basically, Anne is, you know, talking about how when things use the actual name of the lane, people are just confused. They forget, basically, because everyone calls it Spooks Lane. And Anne goes, I have already asked Rebecca Dew about it, but all she could say is that it has always been Spooks Lane, and there was some old yarn years ago of its being haunted. But she has never seen anything worse looking than herself in it. And that was savage. I was like, that is just a savage comment. It's basically saying Rebecca Dew is like the worst thing on that lane. I'm like, wow. Okay. But yeah, it was a lovely book. There was a moment where I wasn't quite sure about Anne when she's helping this young girl with getting together with this lad that she really likes. And those of you who've read the book will know who I'm talking about, because I actually can't remember the character's name for starters. But this character is in two minds about marrying this guy because her dad is against it. And so, yeah, she's basically umming and ahhing, and, you know, she's just dawdling and just making it worse for herself and for her love interest, her possible future husband to be, sort of thing. And I wasn't quite sure about how Anne treated the situation. I wasn't sure. I wasn't comfortable about it. Not that I was uncomfortable, but I also wasn't completely comfortable either. I wasn't sure if this was like something that I could see Anne being like in this situation. I mean, to be honest, it all worked out fantastically for these two characters, for these two young people, because they're younger than her. They're like 18 and 23 or something. Like, the guy's older. Something like that, anyway. And, yeah, no, it all worked out in the end, so actually it was great. But, yeah, I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it, really, with how Anne handled it herself as, like, a sort of mentor to the young girl in question. But I really enjoyed it, though. It was funny. Again, beautiful descriptions of the environments, some beautiful character arcs, and storylines, and situations that end up happening, and all the rest of it. Again, there were some funny characters who were just a bit weird, and very much a product of that sort of time in the... I don't know when these were set. I never know. I always think it's like the 1800s, but I'm never quite sure. But anyway, I really enjoyed it. Again, I adore this cover as well. I absolutely love these Virago Modern Classics versions. They are beautiful. Beautiful covers. I love them. Yeah, very spring. Just so spring. And again, because this consists of Anne teaching in a school for a few years, again, like with all the other books, it goes through all of the seasons. So again, it's not particularly necessarily a seasonal book, but the cover is. And I guess some of them have more of a focus in certain months, I guess. Although I can't think what that is for this. But that, either way, they're always mixed. So you never really have to read them seasonally. but you can if you want, if you can figure it out. So yeah, again, another 5-star, wonderful book. And I'm already enjoying the next one, Anne's House of Dreams. That is my second book of this month. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed Windy Willows more than Anne of the Island. And that's not because I necessarily think I gave Anne of the Island too high of a rating. It was definitely the right rating that I gave it. Because I gave it 5 stars. But I think the reason why I feel like it's not as good is because I only just read it in October, and then I reread it in not April. What was the other one? March. So it wasn't that long ago after reading it for the first time that I reread it, and I think that's why I didn't enjoy it as much. It was still pretty fresh in my mind. So I think that's partly why I feel, at least now anyway, it feels like it's less than 5 stars. It's not. It's not less than 5 stars, I don't think. Or at least, yeah, I think it's more just because I hadn't not long read it and I was already feeling a bit lethargic, slumpy sort of thing. So I think it was a culmination of those things that makes me feel that way. Because actually, it's definitely a 5-star. Anne of the Island. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. So, the next book I'm going to talk about, if I can pick it up off my pile, there we go, is The Wager. And this is a book by David Gran, and this is actually a non-fiction. So this is, as it says here, a tale of shipwreck, mutiny and murder. And this is actually a culmination of information from different things like journals, probably news articles, I think, or just historical documents from different bits. And actually what David Gran did is he wrote it in a narrative. So when you're reading it, it is like reading a story, but it is factual. So as far as I know, there isn't really anything that was made up that I'm aware of. Because what he did was he basically just took the information he had and put it in a book, and basically let the readers decide on who's in the right and who's in the wrong, basically. It was such a good book, even though you kind of know vaguely what happens, and with some of the things that I mentioned, you know at least one or two of the people, well, men, because they were all men at that point, going on these voyages, for the governments or monarchy or whatever. Some of them do survive it. But there were points in this where I was actually gripped. I was like on the edge of my seat, so to speak, because I was like, how are these people going to survive these situations? Because, they're like shipwrecked for months, and in total, some of them have been missing for like a year, 2 years, and they're going through all of these ordeals. And this is set in the not set, but this happened in the 1700s. So obviously people's viewpoints on what is the right thing can be very different to what it is now. So, some people might think those who mutinied were in the right. And obviously the ones who did think they were in the right. But then those who didn't thought they were in the right, and other people would think that too. And it was just really interesting, and I don't know where I stand with it myself. I think, because I can definitely see the reasonings for both sides, but yeah, it was really, really interesting. I would, if you really like your ships and sort of pirates, but this isn't pirates, this is proper navy, Royal Navy sort of people. They're not pirates, technically, although I think the ones mutinied, I think you might call those pirates now, I don't know, but they weren't, they were still, you know, the king's, was it still the king? Yeah, the king's sailors and navy, you know, navy armies and stuff like that. It was really good. So basically, the wager is about a ship of the same name, and it was a part of a whole, you know, load of ships that were under the British Navy. Yeah, I mean, it was really good. There was a lot of ship descriptions, so you know, like how the commanders and leaders of the ships in question led the ships, and you know what people did and all of that stuff. So it was descriptive in that respect. So if you're not interested in that stuff, I probably wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but you might enjoy it afterwards. I don't know, but it was really interesting, really, I don't know, I mean, enjoyable for someone who's not lived through this, you know, reading as an outsider. I mean, obviously, if I was going through it, it wouldn't be enjoyable, obviously, but it was brilliant read, really interesting and informative. Definitely deals with some very interesting topics that can be quite just dependent on things, and there are some great pictures as well, and they're all in colour, so there's like pictures, photocopies of paintings, as well as photographs from like modern day. So if you see here, there's a photograph of a part of the sea in question in one of the areas they were in. So yeah, and there's like pictures of logbooks and stuff like that. All of them are in colour as well, which is incredible. And you know, it's like, it's printed, these pictures and stuff are printed on, you know, glossy paper. So, you know, it would cost a lot of money to do these, because you're also doing it for, I don't know how many copies of this book. But yeah, it was really, really interesting. There were talks about other cultures, because obviously they're travelling. So as you can see here, there's a photograph. I think the photograph was taken a bit later. Let me just check. Yeah, so yeah, that photograph, these photographs are of the kind of native, but you know, the various different indigenous tribes of these islands that they were going past or shipwrecked on, whichever. So obviously, because this took place in the 1700s, there are attitudes that are not very PC, shall we say. But the author David Grant does mention that you know, it was a very different time in those days. So, but to be honest, that stuff was very small. There wasn't really much in it about that. So, and obviously there was nothing graphic about it. So, yeah, I definitely think it's fine to read. I don't remember there being anything inappropriate, but there are mentions of, as it says here, murder and stuff like that. But there's nothing particularly graphic. I mean, it sort of is, but kind of not, because obviously in those days they didn't have things like anesthetic, and when you're on a ship, you're limited to what you can have anyway. So yeah, there are talks about, you know, removal of limbs and stuff like that. So just be aware of that. It is graphic about different illnesses like scurvy and all of that stuff. A lot of illness talk. So yeah, it was fine for me to read, but if you're sensitive, you might find it a bit much. I don't know. You'd have to just use your own judgment call on that one. But I really enjoyed it. There was, interestingly, quite a lot of Christian stuff in it, because, I mean, in those days, most people were Christian, or at least, you know, secular Christian. But there was, one of the people was very much Christian, and actually he was the leader of those who mutinied in the end. So that was interesting. But yeah, but it's not a Christian book. It is just a non-fiction. But yeah, I gave this 5 stars because it was just an incredible read. Really interesting. I really enjoyed it. So if this sort of stuff interests you, I definitely recommend it. Certainly if you can handle things like, a lot of illness talk from lack of nutrition and other things, as well as the small amounts of racism, basically. So yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I read it quite quick for non-fiction. I wasn't quite sure. Oh yes, there are notes at the back, as well as a bibliography. There you go, look, those are some of the notes. They're not indicated in the main bits of the book. So like, how some non-fictions have like a number or something to reference a note for you to look for in the back, or some of them have it underneath the main text. Just depends. But in here, the notes are in the back. There's no indication of what note goes where, although it does tell you what page the notes are on, and stuff like that when you're in the notes. So when you look at this one here, it says, the page numbers there, and obviously what the note is. So because it doesn't tell you, you don't necessarily have to read it alongside it. You could read it afterwards, or do what I did, which after every chapter I then looked at the notes. I don't think you necessarily need to look at the notes, but you certainly can if you're interested. I was interested, and it didn't stop me from being interested, so I kept on doing it. So yeah, you could always try it, and then if you don't like reading the notes, you don't have to continue. Just again, do what you think is best for you, because there isn't any indication in the books, in the main book, or anything like that. There is also a bibliography. I didn't look at that, but there is that as well. So yeah, it was definitely well researched from what I can tell. It definitely seemed like he took it word for word, basically. And most of the time you knew when he was referencing quotes. They were often either in italics or they were in quotation marks, like speech marks. And he usually said that it came from, this person's journal or whatever. So yeah, fantastic book. I really enjoyed it. Let's just see if there's anything I missed in this. I don't think there is. Yeah, no, that was it. So the next book is actually a bonus one. So before I get to that, I'm gonna have a drink. So this next book is a bonus book. This is a book that I started, and I should have a look because I wrote it in. I started this next book on 2nd of June last year, 2024. So it was a long time ago. This is a non-fiction, and it's a Christian non-fiction. When did I finish this? So yeah, I finished this on the 21st of April. So yeah, nearly a year, not quite, but yeah, not quite a year, but nearly. And that was Slaves, Women and Homosexuals. This is exploring the hermeneutics of cultural analysis. And this is by William J. Webb. This is a Christian non-fiction. And this is basically talking about all the different scriptures, talking about these topics basically, which are quite, big topics at the moment, especially the homosexuals one, and also the women's, less so the slaves, but it does crop up, of course. And it certainly was a popular topic anyway, and obviously this is all from a Christian perspective. The author did a great job of being very impersonal, so he didn't really talk much about his own viewpoints. He did it in a very, not intellectual, there's a word for it, I can't remember what it is, but it was very, these are the different viewpoints, and basically very much in the realm of making your own mind up on your own beliefs. He did mainly focus on the sort of conservative patriarchal viewpoints and more the egalitarian, basically liberal, or certainly more liberal sort of viewpoints. And it was really interesting. There are definitely ways where you can just look at the ones about the topics that you're wanting to read about. So if you're particularly wanting to read up about the women ones or homosexuality, then you can. I just did all of it because all of it is interesting. And so yeah, this basically talks about basically why different viewpoints think these ways about these topics. So, why some are very pro something or very against it, and in between as well. And it was just really interesting. I really enjoyed it for a non-fiction. It's definitely not like The Wager. It's not a narrative. This is very much like a proper, not essay, because it's more than an essay, but it's like a proper non-fiction. I will warn you, it is quite intellectual, but he doesn't really. But I'm not an intellectual person in that way, but I did still enjoy it. I did find it interesting, and I still learn things. It's not made me change my mind about anything in particular. I'm not going to go into like my own personal views, because that's not what I'm here to talk about really. But it didn't make me change my mind, but it might it might make other people change their minds, maybe, not necessarily. And that's not his point for it necessarily either. But he definitely does a good job of talking about looking at the scriptures, not just in a literal way, but also thinking about how different scriptures can be brought into our present day thinking. But he also talks about the Old Testament views, the New Testament ones, and then sort of like our modern day perspectives, and also future maybe. So it's really interesting. I really enjoyed it. If you're more of a knowledgeable, intellectual sort of person, or you're just interested anyway, I definitely recommend it. It is quite an old book. I hadn't realised how old it was. He does do notes. They're all underneath. And again, it does tell you when there is a note. So, there's like a number. And then you can look at the bottom of the page. So like there's a line to separate it from the rest of it. And then it tells you the note. And then sometimes the notes are quite big. It just depends. So I did dog ear most of it, basically, and for different reasons. Some of it is because I agree with it, some of it is because it's really interesting, some of it is because I didn't know and thought it was interesting, or I knew but still thought it was interesting. There were times I needed to look up words, but not very many, at least for me anyway. Obviously, we're all different. Some of us who read it might need to look at more of them. But when I did look up the words and then write them in. So yeah, it was really interesting. I enjoyed it for a non-fiction. I was quite excited in ways. Yeah, the author really went deep in the studies and research and stuff like that. So yeah, it was just really well done, I thought it was. And he actually did another book on other sort of popular topics when it comes to the Bible and Christianity. But that was more on the Old Testament wars and stuff like that, basically. I do have that book somewhere, so I want to get to that at some point. I'm just not sure when. But yeah, I did enjoy it. Is there anything I've missed? Yeah, it says everything I have said. So yeah, I really enjoyed it for what it is anyway. If you're interested in this sort of thing, I definitely recommend it. I found it really beneficial because of my home background. in particular in terms of homosexuality, kind of women as well, but mostly homosexuality, because I have a lot of LGBT influences, not with myself personally necessarily, but in terms of family members. So yeah, I can always talk about stuff like that in the future if you want. I'm perfectly happy to do that. I just haven't yet. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. The next book that I read was another classic, and that was Jo's Boys by Louisa May Alcott. This is the fourth and final book in the Little Women series. I think depending on some editions, I think some people have it as a trilogy, because I think some of them have Little Women and Good Wives in one book. My one has them in separate books. So yeah, this is the final book. And this takes place, how many years? 10 years since Jo opened the school for orphans with her husband. And so yeah, all of the characters are a lot older, 10 years older now, so they're all around. I think the youngest is about 14, 13, and then the rest are all older than that, up to about 25, I think the oldest is. And it also talks a bit about the main Little Women characters, of course, Jo, Lucy, and, is it Lucy? Amy, sorry. Jo, Amy, and Meg. So yeah, it was a lovely book. I think I gave this one 4 stars, actually. Let me check. Yeah, so I gave this one 4 stars, partly because I was still feeling a bit slumpy, but also partly because it has been quite a long time since I read Little Men. When did I read Little Men? Yeah, so I read Little Men in September last year. So, reading Jo's Boys in April of 2025, it was quite a while ago, and I struggled with that because I couldn't quite remember the characters, and the characters described in the first book, I then couldn't picture them in my head, so I kept picturing them wrong, and I got things wrong, and there were either things that I forgot from reading Little Men, or the things that had happened kind of in between Little Men and Jo's Boys, and I hadn't realised. I'm not quite sure, but either way, that did make things a bit difficult, so I did struggle a bit with the characters and knowing who was who, and trying to figure out who is in love with who, and all of that stuff. So that didn't help the rating either. But I did enjoy it. I thought it was lovely. I loved the characters. Again, lots of lovely Christian values and outlooks and attitudes. There was still a lot of non-Christian outlooks, certainly in terms of the artistic areas of like art and theatre and stuff like that. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. It didn't affect it really, that stuff anyway. Yeah, there were bits where I cried, of course. I really liked how things ended. I thought some of the endings were very much how the characters were like. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I finished it now, so that's good. I finished the whole series, so that's good, because I tend not to finish series, so yeah. But yeah, not much to talk about that one. It was 4 star. The last book that I'm going to talk about is Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl. This is her diary, basically, that her dad, Otto Frank, kind of put together and edited with Miriam Pressler. Don't know who she is, or he. I assume it's a woman, I'm not sure. But anyway, I read this. This is a non-fiction of her diary, basically, and her diary goes through a few years when does it start? It starts in June 1942, and her last entry was August 1944. So yeah, it takes place over 2 years. It was pretty funny actually in places. It basically just goes about their lives, basically, what a short amount of a little bit before they go into hiding, and then obviously the majority is them in hiding. And it was interesting how they would go through struggles that you would go through, if you weren't in hiding. They would still have their little quarrels and arguments and petty things going on, like two of the mums hiding different things of their own, and not wanting to do the washing up and stuff like that. So it was pretty funny considering what it's about. It was actually quite funny. There's also some pictures of the actual people, like Anne Frank and her parents and sister, the other family who lived with them in hiding. There's a picture of Anne on her birthday with all of her friends. So yeah, it was a good book. It didn't make me cry really. Funnily enough, it was the afterword at the end where someone, I'm not sure who it was who wrote the afterword, it might have been Otto, I'm not sure. But basically that was the afterword at the end is what made me cry. Which is quite interesting really. Because basically it talks about what happened afterwards basically. And it was a lovely book, definitely great for young girls of a similar age group. I think Anna was about 12 or 13, 14, I can't remember now. It's quite young. And obviously, so it's great. I would say it's great for young girls of that age group. I enjoyed it still myself anyway, especially thinking back to when I was a similar age anyway. I do want to warn you that our talks about puberty stuff and bodies in particular of women, girls mostly. She kind of, it's not really referenced much, but there's also talk about boys as well. There was nothing sexual, not really. That she does talk about exploring a friend's body, shall we say, but it was written not in a sexual or spicy, as you would say, way. It was more in a matter-of-fact, kind of scientific, but not really, like she wasn't using scientific words, but, she was kind of, talking about how, the body changed, I guess. So there is talk about things like that, sort of anatomy stuff, but there was nothing particularly, I didn't think it was inappropriate because obviously she's of that age, so it's more in terms of a matter of fact sort of learning about these things. So I don't think it's inappropriate for girls of a similar age, but that might be more a maturity thing and maybe more of a parental thing for you to think about before you let your child read this book, I guess. Or certainly maybe use those parts as a conversation about learning about the anatomy, human anatomy, stuff like that. Just use your best judgment with that one. You might want this more for older teenagers, maybe 14 instead of 12, I don't know. But, I guess it just depends on where your daughter is, in particular, in terms of her puberty and where she is in terms of her body changing. That will have an impact, because obviously if she's starting early, it might be okay, not in terms of maturity necessarily, but in terms of learning and, being able to relate to the characters and how she's feeling and what her hormones are like, and not necessarily like a textbook way, but in terms of like, you know, she's talking about how she's having all these moods at the moment and she's not sure why, sort of thing. And like, obviously when you're that age you relate to that, you know. So yeah, just be aware of things like that, but it's not, I wouldn't say it was inappropriate myself, but I would definitely say use your parental guidance with that one, you know. Do what you think is best, whether you think your daughter's ready to read that sort of stuff. So yeah. I didn't rate this in the end because I know I did rate the other non-fictions, you know, like The Wager and the Christian non-fiction, but because these were diaries and proper diary entries, so like when you're reading the letters in like the Anne of Windy Willows, it's like, you know, it's like you're reading a real person in Anne of Windy Willows. And obviously because you are reading actual diary entries and full diary entries, so not just like quotes, like in The Wager where there are little quotes from the journals of the, you know, the sailors and the Navy commanders. In The Wager, it's like proper entries, you know, like here you've got like one entry starting here and then finishing up there. So like, you know, I didn't feel comfortable basically rating my enjoyment over a young child and her family living in hiding because they're being persecuted by the Nazis and Nazi sympathisers. So, you know, I mean, that's not something I feel comfortable rating, you know. So, you know, I didn't rate it and I'm not going to, but I did enjoy it. So yeah, those are the books I read. I'm going to quickly go through what I use the books for. So first I'm going to use my yearly challenges. So for Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf Challenge, I actually used the same book as for her Year of Maud. So Year of Maud, going through all of the Anne of Green Gables series and then a few extra books by Ellen Montgomery in general. So obviously for April that was Windy Willows, and for Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf Challenge for April it was Flowers. And obviously again it's just one word prompt, so you can use that in any way you want. It could be in the title, on the cover, topic, etc. So I used it for on the cover because flowers on the tree. So I used Windy Willows for her Read Your Bookshelf Challenge as well. Then for Alma's Journey Through Time Challenge for her centuries prompts, I guess. For April it's the 18th century, which is the 1700s. And for that I have been mostly doing set instead of published. So I used The Wager because this is in 1742. So I used that for the Centuries Challenge. And then for the decades I have been doing published, and that is the 1940s for April, and so I used Diary of Anne Frank. This is technically, there's a couple of different publication dates. So I used the kind of the original one, and that was because this was published initially in the 1940s after she died. So the diary's initial publication was 1947. So I used it for this. So that's what I did. 1 second. So yeah, that was the yearly challenge that Alma is doing. For the Princess Bride-athon by Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails, I did 2 prompts. So I did As You Wish, which is Reader's Choice, and I used again The Wager by David Gran, and then I can't talk, but I used Those Boys for Inigo Montoya finish a series because I finished the Little Women series. So I did that. I'm very pleased about that. So that's good. And then for the last yearly challenge for Teresa, her cozy reading challenge, it was the prompt favourite book. Although you don't have to do it in that order, but that's just how I'm doing it. And for that, I don't really have favourite books. So what I did is I kind of changed it into favourite book series instead. And certainly for a favourite book cover, although to be honest, I don't have favourite book covers. I have multiples because I'm like, ooh, that's really pretty, or that's really interesting, or whatever. So for that, I used Anne of Windy Willows because favourite book series. Those of you who are regularly watching my videos, you all know this. I am loving this series, and it's definitely a favourite. So that's it for my yearly challenges. Now I did I write it down in the end? I think I did. Here it is. Okay, yeah. So, Katie, who, funny enough, does Princess Bride-athon, she's been doing an April readathon for the whole month of April called Spring into the Movies. And I joined in with that. And I did get most of the prompts in the end. I just didn't finish a 400 plus page book, obviously, because I read that at the end. I just didn't prioritise that one as much. So I didn't do that one. And I didn't do romantic suspense, yes of course, because I was using the same book for both of those. I was using An Echo in the Darkness, and I'm not going to add that to the readathon because I didn't finish it in April. So I'm not counting that one. So what I did do is the rest. So for Anne of Windy Willows was one of the options, and obviously I read and finished that one. And I used this for Flower in the title because willows. I also used it for an epistolary novel because there is more letters in this than in any of the other Anne books that I've read. And yes, that was it. So I used that. And then I only read 2 books in the end for this readathon. But I then used Joe's Boys for a character sings or plays an instrument. There was a lot of like music stuff and instruments and singing in this. So this, like literally, I think within the first couple of chapters and after as well. So I picked this initially because of the previous books. And I'm very glad that I did because that was a really good call. It was accurate. So I used it for this. I also used this book for Anne Moore on the cover because on this particular cover there are some birds in the background there, as you can sort of see. So it just about counts. I also used this for a hat on the cover because as you can see the 2 boys on this particular cover are wearing hats. And then I also used this for family story because obviously, even though they're not all related by blood, they are all a family relationally. So this is very much a family story. So I used this for that. So I actually did really well, I thought. I used 2 books to fulfill basically 6 out of the 8 prompts. So I thought that was pretty well done. Considering how I'm a slow reader, I thought that was pretty good. So, yeah, that is all of the books that I read and completed. Well, one of them I didn't complete in April, obviously, as you know, which is Echo in the Darkness. But all of the rest I did complete in April, and I'm pretty pleased. I know 2 of them did last longer than April because I read them in previous months / years for the Christian non-fiction, but I'm still counting them. I finished them in the month. So yeah, I'm really pleased with what I read in the end. Considering how I was feeling a bit slumpy, I'm pretty happy with that. So yeah, I'm getting a bit tired now. My eyes are getting a bit dry. It's not late really, but Okay, it's like nearly 10 o'clock, but I'm a bit tired. I've had a headache all day. Not a bad one really, but it's just one of those where it's bad enough that it's annoying me, but it's not actually that bad. Coffee is good though. Right, so I hope you enjoyed this. I don't know when you will see this or how I'm going to do it, whether I'll use it as a separate video or add it on to my May wrap up. I don't know, that it just depends on how things work out. But yeah, I hope you all had a good April. I hope you all enjoyed all the books you read in April. At some point I do want to do a Q&A, but I'm thinking I might wait till my 100th subscriber. It's kind of like a celebratory Q&A sort of thing, like some people have been doing, like, or even just like my anniversary coming up to a year, because I did start my book channel in July last year, so I could always do one to do with that. We'll see how I feel. But yeah, I would like to do a Q&A at some point for some sort of milestone, whether that's a year or 100. We'll see. I don't really care too much about how many subscribers, because to be honest, the subscribers isn't really accurate in terms of views and comments. But yeah, it's all good. I don't mind. I'm not doing this to get famous or lots of money, because I know there's no point thinking that for any channel, but especially if you're doing Christian content. You know, because even like the bigger Christian booktubers or Christian YouTubers in general, you're not going to get loads of money, because just from videos alone it would have to be other things, you know. So yeah. Anyway. I will leave you to it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, let me know, what non-fiction do you like to read? With me it has to be something that interests me, so yeah, I think the nearest thing to one that isn't necessarily interesting to me is this. Although I did enjoy it, it's not that I didn't, it's more normally I pick up topics that interest me. I specifically picked this up for Alma's decades prompt for the 40s. So yeah, bye everyone, God bless, and I will see you all soon, hopefully. Certainly you'll be seeing this at some point anyway. Bye.